All
welcome.
right. Thanks so much, Brad. I appreciate the intro. So thank you everyone for joining me. Welcome, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about building for XR using Unity. Um, I'll be going over kind of what we've been working on with the XR team at Unity and walking you through how you can leverage some of our XR tools um, for your own projects. My goal here, oops, sorry, okay. First off, I just want to get started by introducing myself. My name is Kevin Zakszewski, and I'm a senior software engineer at Unity on the XR team. And the XR team encompasses kind of a wide range of features and tools for things like virtual reality, mixed reality, and augmented reality platforms and beyond. So before I was at Unity, I spent 8 years as a software engineer at Blue Cadet, working with Josh, who's hosting these things. Um, my work was mainly focused on building these kind of large scale digital interactive pieces for museums and cultural institutions across the country. A couple of our partners included like the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, the Art Institute of Chicago, along with a couple others. Um, I have built everything from, large scale interactive projection map pieces all the way to sensor based, full body sensor tracking touch walls to mobile apps and games. If you name a digital interactive piece, I've probably at least like thought about it a little bit. Um, and then after Blue Cadet, I joined Unity, and I've been here for about 3 years now. When I first joined the XR team, I was working on a kind of like multi-user collaborative design tool that was featured at SIGGRAPH in 2022. And these days, I am on the XR authoring team, where I'm primarily working on Unity's XR Interaction Toolkit package, which if you are familiar with VR development in Unity, you're likely familiar with XRI a little bit, as well as working on some of the XR templates that you can find in Unity Hub that I'll be talking about today. Um, Before we get into all the, Unity aspects of things, I just wanted to take a second and step back and kind of frame where I'm coming from in this XR space and what my thought process is when I talk about building for XR and authoring for XR experiences. So I mentioned kind of how at Blue Cadet I worked on interactive installations for museums, and a lot of that work consisted of collaborating with designers and working on user experiences and fine-tuning interaction pieces. And that kind of collaboration and work on creating these immersive experiences for users specifically in the form of like digital storytelling was kind of my favorite part of the work. So fast forward to my time at Unity here, I couldn't be more excited to be in the XR space because to me, in a lot of ways, I kind of view the XR space as a space that is still being defined and needs to be defined in a lot of different ways. So, for instance, like what do common interactions look like for different XR experiences? On mobile and web, we have a lot of common aspects of it, like hamburger menus and swipe gestures, and we kind of all have an understanding of what those do and how to use them for our experiences. But what are those aspects and common design and interaction patterns for XR? Folks like Meta have been working on this for a while, and I think that a lot of these design patterns do exist, but at the same time, the form factor of XR is constantly evolving, and I think that we need to innovate those experiences and interaction pieces with the changing form factor. So that's what I'm excited to work on when it comes to XR, and I hope that's what I'm able to, bring to the table as far as like the tools we provide at Unity when you're building your own XR experiences. Um, at Blue Cadet, I worked a lot with like physical sensors. The image here in the top right corner is a screen grab from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Visitor Center, where we did a large interactive piece that consisted of these two touch tables that were driven by these fiducial pucks. So they were like physical puck sensors that you could drop onto the table, and then it would spawn content for you. So we spent a lot of time iterating over what that like interaction looks like with these physical pucks. Like what happens when a puck is placed on the table? And what happens when you rotate the puck? How does that affect the content on the screen? And what happens when the physical pucks are close to each other? And how do you reconcile two users trying to do conflicting actions to drive the digital experience? So it was this combination of this physical sensor and the digital experience. And I think in a way, XR is kind of that problem in a different form factor. Like, what else is XR if not like, you have these mixed reality experiences where you're fully immersed in like this virtual headset and you can reach out and touch tabletops and the world around you and spawn virtual objects in this virtual environment, but kind of mix your real world space into that. So it's cool to see that like the problems I was solving at Blue Cadet are still available and to be solved in this new space. So the last thing I want to talk about here is just I think XR represents such a unique like user experience for folks. We understand as a culture, I think, like how touchscreens work via our mobile phones and all of our interactions that way. But I think when you're fully immersed in like a VR experience, it's not always clear to folks what to expect or what to do in that aspect. So I think we get the chance here to kind of define and teach how folks should be experiencing and interacting in this space and kind of like learning along with them of like what works and what doesn't work. Um, at Blue Cadet, I spent years working for users that are like museum goers and like kind of seeing how my development process could tell stories for them. And now at Unity, I kind of have come full circle here where my users that I work for at Unity are kind of folks like y'all who are building these digital interactive experiences, and I'm building tools to try to make that process a little bit easier. I'm kind of building, my user is kind of myself 10 years ago at Blue Cadet. So I understand like where that process is coming from and what the needs are for that. So I think my perspective in that is, important when it comes to building tools like this. But like ultimately, there are two user experiences that I want to solve and serve at Unity. The first one being the developer experience of how to build these things. And then the second one being I want to make cool tools to enable you guys to make even cooler experiences for your audiences in the XR world. So that's kind of my point of view from XR as we get into the technical aspects of this and kind of where I want to focus the conversation. And hopefully, you guys are as excited about the XR experience as I am. So with that context, let's take a look at kind of what we'll be talking about today. Um, First off, I want to take a look at the XR templates available in Unity and highlight a few of their features and discuss their use cases. Um, After that, I will be walking through some of the XR packages available and what they're used for. And then we'll dive into some sample content available to all creators and developers. Um, these are samples that are available for everyone to use. You can modify them, you can build on top of them, or you could just use them to investigate and learn some implementation techniques and best practices for building your own experiences. But this is the content that we really hope saves you guys time in your prototyping and development process. And then lastly, Brad and I will take some time to discuss our own experiences with XR design, similarly to how I just kind of talked about. And then if there's time at the end, I'd love to take like 5 to 10 minutes to answer any questions that you guys may have from the presentation. So with that, let's get started into the templates. Okay, so the templates I'll be talking about today are all available in Unity Hub right now. So if you'd like to follow along, and you can go into Unity Hub and use a project as a reference, feel free to do that at this time. I think Brad mentioned this at the top. We won't really be doing any live coding or demos, but having some of the things I'm talking about in front of you could be useful to kind of see what these components are of Unity and kind of what I mean when I talk about them in a little bit more detail. So to get going with this, you can open up Unity Hub, and then in the upper right-hand corner, you can select the New Project button, and then that will bring up a list of all the templates for the selected editor version that you have. And on the screen here, the editor version is kind of denoted in like the upper middle part where it says New Project. Um, I recommend using Unity 6 as some of our newer XR templates might not be available for some of the older versions of the Unity editor, but any recent-ish version of the editor should be fine for our purposes here. So you can scroll through that template list and find any templates that I've listed on on this slide here. But my recommendation would be starting a new project with the MR template as it has a lot of kind of the topics that we're going to be discussing today. All right. So here are the 5 XR templates that are available for you in Unity Hub. Um, each of these templates are complete with a sample scene, assets, and they come pre-configured with the recommended packages and project settings. They're all configured with OpenXR for cross-platform support, so all you really need to do is just plug your headset in, build or press play, and go. It may seem like a lot, and if you're newer to XR, you may not know the differences between VR, MR, and AR. So I want to give a quick overview of kind of those topics, and then we'll look at each one individually in a little bit more depth. So first off on the left, we have the virtual reality template. And as it says on the tin, the virtual reality template is a great place to start for any virtual reality project. Um, when I talk about virtual reality, I'm referring to like a completely immersive virtual experience. This is probably what you think of most commonly when you think of headsets like the Meta Quest or the Valve Index. Um, Next off, we have the mixed reality template. You could think of mixed reality as a combination of the completely virtual experience that I described for the virtual reality template, along with some physical aspects of the real world mixed in. So, for instance, a mixed reality application may make use of things like pass-through cameras in your headset that allow you to see and interact with the real world around you, or it could detect real-world planes and surfaces and enable you to spawn virtual objects on top of them and combine the two. Similar to that, augmented reality is the combination of layering those virtual objects on top of real-world spaces, typically viewed through a mobile device camera. A great example of this is like Pokemon Go, where it can appear like the Pokemon is in front of you in the real world. These last two templates, the VR multiplayer template and the and the MR multiplayer tabletop template, those are our two newest templates, and they aim to expand on the base VR and MR experiences by adding multiplayer support and examples of networked interaction. So the VR multiplayer template is a fully immersive VR experience, complete with avatars, multiplayer rooms, and voice chat. Honestly, even if you're not building like a VR multiplayer experience, you should definitely check this template out. It's a lot of fun. It's got a cool sandbox, tons of mini games, and you can hop in there with your friends, and it's a blast. So definitely check it out. Um, Last but not least, we have the MR multiplayer tabletop template. And this is our newest template that was just released a few weeks ago. If you're interested in building a multiplayer mixed reality experience, this should be your starting point. Similar to the multiplayer VR template, the mixed reality template has avatars, multiplayer rooms, and voice chat support, as well as a couple of mixed reality features like pass-through. Um, cool. So now that we know a little bit more about what each of these templates entail, let's take a look at them in a little bit more detail. As I mentioned, the VR template is a great starting point for your fully immersive virtual reality projects. The sample scene and project is set up for all the basic VR needs, like XR player rig. It supports your locomotion right out of the box and interaction with interactable objects and UI elements. On the left-hand side here, you can see locomotion features like continuous motion and teleportation, as well as a tunneling vignette for comfort that's optional. This template's fully configured with a bunch of interactable objects with which for the sake of my own brain, I'll refer to as interactables probably throughout this talk. Those are objects that you can grab, rotate, toss, and activate. This is what you can see in the middle there. And then the VR template also provides an example of world space UI and video support. The spatial panel on the right-hand side of this right-hand GIF comes with example sliders and UI drop-down menus and buttons and toggles that you can interact with. These UI elements can be interacted with both the ray, which you can see in the video there, or you can poke them with the controller. And I'll get into the different types of interaction like poking a little bit more later in the talk. And the World Space UI also has an interactable handle that you can grab and move the UI elements around the space. This template's full of all of these objects that are created as prefabs. So any of these objects you can bring into your own template and do whatever you wish with them, modify them, and build on top of. The VR template supports devices like MetaQuest and Apple Vision Pro and other OpenXR supported devices. The XR Interaction Toolkit package is included to provide all the player locomotion and all the object interaction. And we've also integrated some core Unity systems that you may be familiar with, like the Universal Render Pipeline for Graphics, or URP, and the input system, as well as UGUI for UI support. For real-world interactions in your experiences, you definitely want to check out the MR template. The MR template supports hand tracking in addition to controllers, and combining hand tracking with the real-world plane detection of the MR template and the visualizations enable a much more natural interaction with the objects and environments around you. So the image on the left, you can see a user tapping on the table surface and spawning an interactable object in their virtual environment, which they can then interact with as any other interactable. The MR template also provides a cool example of a hand-locked UI menu to control various settings and functions in the scene. So you can rotate your hand or controller to hide or show the menu. And this enables you to interact with the UI of the menu without having it block your normal interaction when you're just interacting through the scene. And then lastly, you can toggle pass-through on or off to immerse yourself fully in the virtual environment or to view the physical world around you. The mixed reality template can be deployed on devices like MetaQuest, HoloLens, or Magic Leap. And when you create a project with the MR template, Unity's AR Foundation package and XR Hands package are automatically included to support the hand tracking and plane detection functionality in the MR template. And similar to the VR template, the MR template leverages existing Unity systems like URP, Input System, and UGUI. For augmented reality, the mobile AR template has all your basic needs covered. You can spawn and interact with objects through XRI, and you can even utilize shaders for occlusion and shadow casting shown in the middle there. You can scale, move, and rotate your objects in the scene by just touching and dragging around on your screen as well. The mobile AR template supports AR Core and AR Kit for your respective Android and iOS devices, and similar to the MR template, world tracking is provided through the AR Foundation package. Okay, now this is the fun template that you should definitely check out. So the VR multiplayer template is an expansive multiplayer scene that includes all the packages and code you need for a multiplayer experience. The template provides networked functions like networked hand tracking, networked avatars, networked music, networked message board, and networked object interaction. It leverages Unity gaming services to manage rooms and sessions, player identities, and voice chat. And it also provides some cool features like spatialized voice chat, avatars that mimic mouth movement, and a bunch of fun mini games. Similarly, the MR multiplayer tabletop template offers a different kind of multiplayer starting point. Similar to the VR multiplayer template and many of its multiplayer features, it offers an experience focused on merging the virtual world and the real world as described in the mixed reality template. The sample scene is based around this kind of interactive tabletop that you share with your friends, and you can move the table around your physical space, place it on your desk or the floor or any other real world surface to align it with your space. There are also modes for fully immersive VR, mixed reality, where you can kind of move your head and hands in and out of the mixed reality like spatial cube, and AR, which offers a completely pass-through view. The full pass-through lets you kind of like position it on your table and make it seem like your friends' avatars are in the space with you. It's a lot of fun. You can see some of the examples of the networked game modes in the left here. That includes game modes like chess. There's this super fun balloon popper game. And then my favorite mode is this interactive sandbox mode, which I don't know if anyone has ever played like The Incredible Machine, but like that's the vibes it gives. I'm just like, I want it. We've spent like hours just like building tubes and dropping dice and stuff all over the place and making these crazy contraptions. So it's a lot of fun. And then the pass-through mode, which honestly is really, really effective, is demonstrated in the middle panel there. All right. So now that we know a little bit more about the templates and the starting points from Unity Hub, let's take a look at some of the XR packages that make all of that possible. Each of the XR templates comes with the necessary packages included. So while you won't have to download any of these, it's important to know what each package does so you can understand what it offers. So let's first back up and say, what is a package? Oh, Brad, you came off mute. Yeah, I was like, is there a question? We're all good.
My
Okay.
question, I don't know people's expertise with Unity, so I was going to ask
Yeah.
you to define package. So you're on it. Never mind.
Heck yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, if you haven't used Unity, if you have not used Unity, you might not be familiar with packages or where to find them. So in short, a package is a container of various types of features and assets available for you to use in your project. For our purposes, talking about these XR packages that I'll be highlighting, you can think of a package as a set of editor and runtime tools and libraries available for your projects. If you're following along at home, you can open up Unity and select the window option in the top menu bar, and then select Package Manager. This will open up the Package Manager window where you can find all the various packages available through Unity. And I'll be referencing this window a bit in the next couple sections, so feel free to leave it open as a reference. So there are a number of XR packages that you might use while building an XR project in Unity. Packages like XR Core Utils provides a lot of common utility classes and APIs for you to use, while XR Plugin Manager helps manage plugins and XR settings. However, for our purposes today, I'll be highlighting 3 packages that provide more interaction-based features. These are the packages that you will likely be interacting with and utilizing and extending as you kind of build your own interactive experiences. So the first one, we have XR Interaction Toolkit, or XRI. This is a high-level interaction system and framework for creating cross-platform XR experiences. As I touched on briefly in the template section, this is what provides all the interaction and player locomotion for projects, along with a few other important features. AR Foundation in the middle here, which again, you may recall from the AR and MR templates, provides core functionality for cross-platform AR applications, as well as some important MR features like plane detection, world tracking, and pass-through. And then lastly, we have the XR Hands package that provides access to hand tracking data and the hand tracking subsystems. In combination with XRI, you can easily leverage the ability to switch between hands and controllers at runtime for your experiences. When all these packages are utilized together, a lot of the basic XR features that you would hope to build can easily be included into your packages, or sorry, into your projects, leaving you more time to properly iterate on your own game and designs and ideas. So let's get into XRI, which is the package that I work on my day-to-day. So XRI started off as a toolkit that was primarily focused on providing cross-platform interaction support for XR creators. Over time, though, it's evolved into a much more comprehensive spatial application framework that provides the foundation for a lot of XR experiences. At its core, XRI is a high-level interaction system into which a lot of basic interaction functionality has been built into. The core functionality of XRI could be simplified by the concepts of interactables and interactors. An interactable, that's shown on the left-hand side here, are objects with which you can interact. A common example of this is a grab interactable, a component and script which comes with XRI out of the box that you can drag and drop onto your objects and turn them into interactables. Interactors are the things with which you do the interacting. So the image on the right-hand side shows some various types of interactors. And interactors are most commonly live on the user's hands or controllers. In the image to the right at the top, you can see the red line indicating the far or array interactor. This allows you to interact with interactables at a distance. I'm going to be saying interact a lot in this whole section, so apologies if I stumble. The poke interactor is represented at the tip of the pointer finger, but poke interactors can also be included on the tips of controllers as well. The interactor closest to the hand is the direct or near interactor, and this near interaction is demonstrated in the interactable imagery over to the left. XRI provides a lot of interfaces and classes like XR base interactor, XR near far interactor, and XR poke interactor, all of which can be extended to build your own custom interactors. Similarly, you can take interactable classes like XR Base Interactable and XR Grab Interactable and extend those for custom interactable classes to add functionality that you need out of that doesn't come out of the box. Here's a closer look at some near interaction. On the left-hand side, we're using a pinch gesture to select and grab the interactable on the table. And on the right-hand side, you can see the poke interactor on the tip of the finger is able to poke the UI elements, but it's also able to poke the 3D button on the table as well. One thing to note, when the poke interactor hovers over a button, it changes color, indicating a hover state. And XRI has a few interaction states like hovered, selected, focused, and activated on both interactors and interactables. So this will allow you to respond to interaction events accordingly, like changing color when a certain thing happens or triggering some kind of event like a particle system. Here's a quick demo of some FAR interaction. You can note the Ray interactor can interact with both the physical world interactables as well as the UI elements in the spatial panel. And you can easily transition from far interaction to near interaction by just pulling the objects closer to you. Some other really important aspects of XRI and XR development are the XR origin, the camera, and the locomotion, all of which XRI has you covered for. So this is a screen grab of our XR origin prefab, which can be found in our XRI starter assets sample, which I will talk about later. And this contains everything you need for your player in the scene. If you started with one of the templates from the beginning and are following along, you'll have some variation of this XR origin prefab if you want to check it out as we go along with this. So at the top level, the XR origin game object is pre-configured with an XR origin component, and that serves as your tracking origin for the XR scene. You can find the player camera, the interactors, and the locomotion providers nested underneath that game object. Each locomotion game object has a locomotion provider of a certain type that allows a specific locomotion type. And that can easily be turned off by just disabling the component. Additionally, XRI components have some key properties exposed so that you can modify them in the editor to make your authoring process a little bit easier. So in this picture here, or in the slide here, let's take a look at the teleport interactor and the move object here. I'm going to be referencing those next. Okay, so for example, if you clicked the move game object, you would see something like a continuous move provider or a dynamic move provider, depending on your version. And that's pictured on the left-hand side here. It has settings exposed like move speed and Boolean checkboxes to easily enable or disable movements like strafe and fly. So all you have to do is just enable fly in your mode, and then your player rig will be able to fly around the screen. Nice and easy. When you click on the teleport interactor, you'll see components like XR Ray interactor and XR interactor line visuals. To create the curved teleport ray that I have pictured on the right-hand side here, the raycast configuration is set to projectile curve. This differs from the straight line used for the different object interactions seen in the other slides. Additionally, the XR interactor line visuals provides custom fields like line color and reticle prefabs, which allow you to modify the color of the line and place your own reticles at the end of the ray. So in this example here, you can see that kind of rounded arrow indicating the direction of your teleport. You can customize your own model and just replace that prefab, and then that will be placed at the end of your line there. All right. I know this graph looks a little scary, but like in short, XRI just provides cross-platform interaction support and abstracts the specifics of the Unity input system away from the authoring process. The common interaction patterns and built-in features it provides reduces the time and effort needed for building for various XR devices. Okay. Next, we'll talk about ARF here. So AR Foundation is a key package when it comes to AR projects and MR projects. It enables you to build cross-platform AR and MR projects, and it leverages the platform's native SDK for its features. So by adding an AR session component to your scene, in addition to your XR origin, you can easily add any ARF feature to your project simply by adding the corresponding feature manager to your scene. So that sounds confusing. Let's look at an example. So if you looked at both the MR template and the AR template, in the AR template, the XR origin has an AR plane manager component and an AR raycast manager component, thus adding support for the plane data and the ray interaction with the objects in the scene that's displayed on the right-hand side. So it's pretty easy to add these features and continue on with your testing. AR Foundation also provides a bunch of other AR features besides those, like image tracking, persistent anchors, occlusion, and bounding box detection. But as you can see from this table, not all ARF features are supported on all devices. So be sure to refer to it while you're building your own experiences. And this can be found just on the ARF package documentation page. All right. If you're interested in leveraging hand tracking for XR, this is the package for you, the XR Hands package. It provides access to detailed hand tracking data for the devices that support it. The Hands package has built-in support for OpenXR and visionOS. You can also create custom hand subsystem providers to support other devices as well. So the Hands package also provides pose and gesture detection for a set of predefined configurations demonstrated in the sick GIF in the middle here. And if you need even more poses and gestures, you can define your own. You can access hand tracking data like position, orientation, and velocity across various points of user's hand and joints. And later on, we'll take a look at some more of the XR hand samples. Okay, this is a high-level snapshot of the XR hands architecture. You can see in the middle here, the XR hand subsystem is receiving tracking data from the OpenXR provider and the visionOS provider. The purple box there labeled other platforms represents a custom hand system provider that anyone can write. So once the custom provider is created, you can then access that hand tracking data in your application the same way you would any other device. Cool. So that was my technical dive on some of the packages. So now that we have a good understanding of the templates and the things that kind of make them work, let's take a look at some additional sample content and features that we have available for you all to leverage in your projects. All right. The first place to find XR samples would be in the editor in the packages themselves. Some packages use Package Manager to provide samples relevant to their code base. For those of you following along, I hope there's one or two of you, if you open up Unity and navigate to the Package Manager window, again, this is Unity, the window menu item in the top bar, and then select Package Manager. You can then select the package that you're interested in checking out. On the right-hand side of the Package Manager, you'll see all the information for that package. And if there are any samples available, there'll be a little samples tab that lists all of those available samples and a button to import them. So this is an example for XRI displayed on the right-hand side here, where you can see the description, the version history, the dependencies, and then the samples tab. Okay, when you import package samples, they'll be added to your project folder under assets/samples. Once they're in your project, they will be like any other script or asset that you have in your project. You'll be able to use them and modify them however you need. There is one important note though. If a sample is already included into your project, the import button will change to re-import. If you've modified any of the sample files, re-importing will blow away any changes that you've made to those assets. So just be mindful as you're modifying to create copies of them to preserve your changes. You can treat the asset and samples folder as a place where you might lose changes like that. Using package samples like this is useful though, because it gives us the ability to update the samples and re-import them into your project if you upgrade your package version. So for example, if your project is using a sample from XRI 3.0 and you upgrade to XRI 3.1, you can navigate to the samples tab of XRI in the package manager, and the import button will say update. Clicking that will update the existing sample in your project to be in sync with the version of the package that you've included. It's recommended to keep your sample versions in sync with your package versions, but the same note I said before about re-importing the packages or re-importing the samples still applies. If you modify the sample, updating it will also blow away changes that you've made to the sample. In addition to the package manager samples, XRI and AR Foundation have public GitHub repositories with some more in-depth samples. These repositories are maintained separately from the packages, so they may lag behind a little bit. However, it allows us to provide a much larger set of examples for you all. So let's start going through some of the XRI samples available in the package manager. All right. The first and most important sample, I would say, is the XRI starter assets. This is the base sample that is automatically included in all of the XR templates and provides essential assets for all this quick configuration. If you remember that XR origin prefab that we took a screenshot of earlier, that was from this sample. That was from the XRI starter asset sample. Um, the sample provides a fully configured XR origin prefab, complete with all the interactors, locomotion, and controller models as you saw before. It also provides some grab and poke and teleport interactable objects and prefabs that you can use in your own scene. The starter asset sample also contains a demo scene that showcases all of the XRI basic functionality and contains things like teleport pads, teleport areas, interactables, UI interaction, and climb locomotion. This is the perfect sample to build your own variants from as you build your XR experiences. Now, if folks who have already been developing for XR, you know it is a little bit tedious to constantly don and off your headset as you're testing and iterating on all these things that you're building in the editor sometimes. So if you want to quickly test in the editor, you should check out the XRI device simulator. This is a runtime utility that lets you simulate user interactions and inputs via mouse and keyboard. So with the simulator, you can move the entire player, just the camera objects, both controllers, or individual hands and controllers. With the controllers or hands selected, you can even simulate grip, trigger, face buttons, and thumbsticks. And when paired with the hands package, you can simulate hand gestures and poses to test your poke interaction as well. If you're following along at home, you may notice that this imagery is a little different from your version that you have in the editor. These images are from our pre-release version of XRI 3.1, which should be available early this year. Okay, last year, we released our spatial keyboard sample alongside the multi-VR template to leverage its input for room codes and names and the message board functionality. So this sample provides base spatial keyboard prefabs and scripts that allow you to add and customize your virtual keyboard in your experience. The keyboard's currently built to work with input fields as the main use case, but can be expanded upon or customized to support cases like buttons or a script-based workflow. If you don't find a key or a layout that you want out of the box, that's fine. You can actually create custom keyboard layouts and write custom key functions to implement in your own keyboard. The keyboard works both as a world space keyboard that you can place in the scene, or you could use it as a global keyboard in rig space, which follows your player around the space and will activate in front of you whenever you trigger it. There's a demo scene available in the sample as well to showcase the various features and settings for this. Also, this is one of the main samples that I worked on last year, so I hope you guys like it. All right. XRI Hands Interaction Demo is a sample focused on leveraging XRI in the Hands package and providing that interaction overview. It demonstrates hand interaction for near and far, poking, and UI interaction. But most crucially, and this is important, so pay attention if you want hands, it provides an XR origin prefab that is configured already with both hands and controllers. The starter assets one currently supports controllers. You should check out this sample if you want a prefab that contains both hands and controllers. But again, it's completely set up for you to drag and drop into your scene, and you should have access to the hands and controllers aspect of it. All right, enough about XRI. This is the XR Hands gesture sample. So keeping with the theme of hands, the XR Hands package provides a gesture sample that helps visualize and debug hand data and gesture data. Each finger has a debug visualizer that provides data like curl, pinch, and spread. Additionally, the finger-shaped visualizer contains red and green visualizations to represent the tolerance data for each shape. So you can see when your finger is in a full curl, or if it is spread out, or if it's in a pinch gesture. Live visualization like this is super helpful when it comes to creating your own custom gestures and debugging any gesture or hand mesh issues. So this one's super helpful. Also, I think it just like visually looks really sick. It's a really cool demo. All right. Let's move outside of the package manager and focus on the examples available on GitHub here. So for a more detailed example project, you should check out the XRI examples repository available on GitHub. This is a large demo scene with, I think, 10 stations at this point, each which highlights a key aspect of XRI, like base grab interaction, socket interaction, gaze interaction, 2D UI, climbing locomotion, just to name a couple things. There's also a locomotion setting station that allows you to modify your locomotion settings at runtime. So you can go up to the station pictured here, enable fly, change the locomotion type of your left or right hand individually, or adjust your move speed before you kind of move around the space. It also provides a great example of some various interactables, like a one-handed blaster and a two-handed blaster, and there's even a claw machine that leverages a 3D joystick. So that's pretty cool. To use this repository, just navigate to GitHub. I posted the link here. I'll share it out later, I guess. But if you just search XR Interaction Toolkit examples, it should come up. And all you have to do is download it and open the project in Unity. Similarly, AR Foundation has a GitHub samples repository at arfoundation-samples. This repository thoroughly covers the ARF features listed in this table here, each one having at least one scene. Some of them have multiple, and they provide really simple sample scenes for each feature. And it's great because these sample scenes are so compact and straightforward that you can really easily duplicate them and include them in your own projects. So that's a great reference project when you need to add some AR features. Okay, that was a lot of me talking. So let's just give a quick summary of Unity and kind of what we discussed here. So the XR templates, if you're starting a new project or are new to XR development and you want to learn, the XR templates are an excellent place to start and get you set up with everything you need for cross-platform development. As you become more familiar with XR, you can leverage XR packages like XRI, ARF, and the XR Hands package to quickly integrate a lot of XR features into your own projects. You can easily extend classes and implement interfaces to build your own custom code and add additional functionality on top of all the existing features. And to quickly get up and running, package samples and repositories provide a ton of scripts and assets and prefabs that you can pull into your own projects and modify for your own needs. Just some additional resources here. There is an official Unity Discord and the Unity discussion forums. The XR team, specifically the XR authoring team, we are pretty active on those, and we should be there to help answer any questions that you may have and point you guys in the right direction. So feel free to reach out to us there. Okay, so that was my overview of XR and Unity. And Brad, I wanted to take some time at the end here to kind of chat with you a little bit more about your own experience in designing designing for museums and XR experiences, and see where you see it going. So I'm gonna.
Thank you so much for this walkthrough, Kevin. This
Yeah.
has been great. I'm gonna give you a little applause there.
Oh, thanks.
You covered a lot of ground. Yeah, and so we're going to chat a little bit. I think Kevin and I are going to bounce around some ideas and some what we hope to be interesting conversational prompts.
Yeah.
But if you have a question for Kevin, now is the time. Please drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to do, we're probably looking at the clock. We're probably not going to get a chance to get through everything. I'm hoping people come to the chat with some juicy questions. And if we don't get to your question, I've pre-vetted this with Kevin at the beginning. You could reach out to him on LinkedIn if you have a specific question and want to do a follow-up.
Yep.
So yeah, Kevin, where do you want to get started? What do you think?
Yeah, so I kind of touched at this at the top, but the thing that excites me the most about this like XR space and the experiences that folks can kind of drive is this like idea of what the user experience looks like in the new space. So maybe I'll kick us off there. So in the top right corner here, I have a little sizzle reel of the XR design framework that I worked on when I first joined Unity that was featured at SIGGRAPH. And it was really this kind of like proof of concept for authoring in XR space and designing these different interactions and tools and kind of seeing how we could interact with the space around us. Like you can see in the demo here, we have a tool that like a tool menu that lets you like physically move the controller to select different tools and just define all these different interactions here. And I just think that this is the most exciting part. I mean, you mentioned that talk or the class that you're teaching, right? With the new inputs and stuff. So how do you see like XR and interaction kind of like moving forward, I guess?
Ah, interesting. Yeah. So what's Kevin is referencing is I'm going to be teaching a class this upcoming spring semester at Parsons School of Design here in New York, in which we're kind of creating sort of alt controllers for game spaces primarily. So we were talking about that, and I think this little widget that you've highlighted in the top right corner, where you've got a GUI component, you're dragging an element out of that, and then as soon as it leaves the GUI, it develops like a physical
Yeah.
structure that you can then manipulate within the environment. I think that's really interesting, and it got me thinking of the thing that I'm kind of currently most excited about, as well as what I'm hoping to get into with my students this next semester, which is these hybrid experiences
Mm.
that are both MR and analog. Like, MR, we've got this kind of thing where there's a digital overlay and it's interacting with the world in a
Yeah.
meaningful way. But what I'm really kind of keen to do, particularly within the museum space, because you have all these arguments against the use of MR, like the technology and all this stuff,
Sure.
is augmenting, can use that word even though it means something else, augmenting or building upon an existing physical exhibit that functions well on its own, but then developing on top of that an MR layer in which people can do a kind of a deep dive into other kinds of content.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a deeper sort of localization story about that whatever the physical phenomenon that you're engaged in, and you can kind of have different touch points. So I think I'm really interested in that, these hybrid
Yeah.
experiences, where you
It,
can do it completely digitally, you could do it completely physically, but it's the conversation between the two that are really exciting.
That's a great point. And actually, I have a piece on this slide here that is kind of that this like Van Gogh bedroom exhibit. So this is a piece that I did with Blue Cadet back in 2016. I built a touchscreen for it, but there was also this bedroom that they physically recreated of Van Gogh's bedroom paintings, and they did this projection mapped piece where they animated all of the paint strokes and really like you could stand in the window and look into this physical room and through projection mapping see like the Van Gogh painting, which was really cool. And it got me thinking like if mixed reality via glasses, you said the argument with the headsets, it's tedious. You don't want to put on headsets in museums that a million folks have used. But if the form factor was more accessible, like some kind of glasses format or like, how people use 3D glasses, being able to have a space like this where you could just pop on some AR glasses and interact with the space around you and maybe like drag your hand over the surfaces and like paint with Van Gogh's stroke technique in this physical space and like literally generate his like bedroom painting in front of you in the physical real world space, I feel like is a excellent museum use case. And that's where I'm most excited too.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to divert to some of the questions in the chat because I
Oh
want to
yeah, let's do it.
prioritize. I want to prioritize what some people are surfacing here. Elena has a question. She's kind of also interested in this sort of the interplay between physical and digital, and how might there be ways to encourage people to collaborate and socially connect with one another, particularly keeping in mind Christopher's comment in the chat that we have to keep in mind that continuum between physical and digital. If some people
Mhm.
are operating in the analog space and some are in the digital space, how do we kind of actually really kind of maintain that connection, do you think?
It's a good question. I feel like it's one that doesn't necessarily get enough attention in the XR space. You really try to drive these like cool new features. Just to kind of go back to what we talked about today, I feel like the space, like something like the MR tabletop template, right, allows you. I know they can't see your physical the table that you are seeing in your headset, but you could, in theory, do co-location with that MR tabletop template and both configure it so that you're kind of like lined up in the space. So you can combine that interaction. Um, but I do agree that there's kind of this like gap between like real world social interaction when it comes to someone who's like in this fully immersive VR headset. And I think they're doing a great job of like leveraging like social VR apps like, VR chat and all that stuff. But yeah, that combination of the two is honestly something that I don't know that I have an answer for right now, but it's certainly a topic that I think is interesting and should be addressed in the XR space.
But there's something like Apple Vision Pro. You can actually
Yeah.
see through the lenses themselves, so you can see the people in the world around you, which
Yeah.
is differentiating from VR. So that could enable social interaction. But
Yeah.
A,
I
Apple Vision Pro is expensive, and
yeah.
B, I think it requires some custom code. Like maybe that's not
Yeah.
going to come out of the box.
Also, I'm struggling with like the disconnect of like the experience in the Apple Vision Pro, right? Like I interpreted that question of like, how do you bring someone who's in the real space into the virtual space with you when they don't have access to that? And that I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that, but yeah. Are there any other questions in the chat you want to call out?
As a question, we're talking about museums, but I think he's
Mhm.
actually, I think, asking you to expand a little bit about where do you see like the killer app? Like,
The
well,
killer app.
like what is maybe a more mainstream, highly either entertaining or utilitarian application of MR?
Yeah. That's a great question. So personally, my favorite VR experiences are kind of like a lot of the mainstream ones like Beat Saber. I think they like nailed that like core base interaction, right? Like it's simple, it's easy to understand, you can get folks involved. That's obviously like a huge one. Personally, I think that the experiences that will take off a little bit more are the social ones. You can see that with VR chat and I think Gorilla Tag as well, where folks are kind of interacting in this multiplayer space with each other. And I think the more adoption we see in the XR space with devices and stuff, and the more accessible that experience becomes to folks, the social aspect and the social games and experiences will be, I think, like the place to be. This is just a quick snippet of what's on the screen here, but in the bottom right, there's this experience for the Museum of Other Realities. And that kind of goes to what I'm talking about, where you can kind of go to this virtual reality museum and socialize with your peers, and a lot of the interaction is like kind of co-located to, or you kind of do interactions in the museum together. And I really think that the social aspect of VR is what's going to kind of take off.
I wanted to go back. There was a question early on about, let me see, I think it was about how this connects to other platforms like the web.
Mhm.
I'm scrolling back to the chat to sort of remind myself. Yeah. How well do XR experiences built in Unity integrate with the web, browsers, smartphone, basically kind of multi-platform?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Um, Yeah, so there is a web XR. I am not personally involved with the web XR folks, but I think that, yeah, I wish whoever asked that follow up with me on LinkedIn because I could definitely provide you with some better context post discussion here. But I think that like my thought on that is the more accessible we can make the XR experiences, the more successful it will be, right? Like I think the headset is limiting. I think that just from like an accessibility standpoint, I think that the mobile AR experiences are very cool, but don't have the same punch as the fully immersive pieces. So once you start integrating stuff like the web, it just becomes available to like so many more people. And I think that's really where things are going to start being more widely adopted.
Let me see. There's so many good questions are sort of like just sh
Yeah, yeah.
showing up here in the chat. Elaine was asking about about collaboration through AR. For example, could people build something together in the digital space and have the digital object show up on both their devices?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's I mean that is kind of what the XR design framework was building, not in phone space and not AR space, but in the um, in the headset space. So I think as you get into stuff like mixed reality, that's where it's more accessible. The phone thing's a good question. I don't know of anything personally off the top of my head that like solves that successfully, but I could be just out of the loop on something. But the whole idea of the spatial design framework was to build objects, comments, objects, or I said objects, in this shared multiplayer space and have it persist over time and use it as kind of like a design review framework. So that is what we were kind of working on internally as a proof of concept.
Cool. Let me see. This is kind of a doozy, but it's a good question. So I'm going to
Yeah,
let
yeah.
you know we got just a couple minutes left. Craig says he's interested in a fully immersive visual XR experience, say underwater dive in a shared space where users can interact physically with one another. He's
Mhm.
wondering which template would be a good starting point and where to branch out into tracking for physical interactions.
Okay, cool. That's a great question. So if you're interested in a multiplayer experience, like a fully immersive VR experience, without mixed reality implementations like real world stuff, definitely start on the VR multiplayer template. That will have everything that you need for managing the sessions in rooms and all that kind of stuff that you're talking about. As you start branching out into the mixed reality real world aspect, that becomes a little bit more complicated, and you should check out the mixed reality tabletop template, because the mixed reality tabletop template implements the pass through, and you can add AR features like plane tracking and stuff to that. However, it is a stationary tabletop experience, so you would have to pull in some locomotion aspects of your first idea in the VR multiplayer template to kind of navigate in that space. Now, I will say something like Fly that we have built into the XRI stuff, that would probably simulate a lot of your underwater movement pretty well. And I think you could really easily integrate that into the MR multiplayer tabletop template.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I
Yeah.
figured that was going to be a slightly deeper one. Last question, then we'll wrap it up. Christopher is asking, how easy is it to port into social VR programs?
How easy so sorry, so create stuff for like VR chat and stuff, I assume he's asking.
Jump on
Again,
mic. Oh, yes,
yeah,
in the
VR
chat, he
chat
said
engage.
yes. Yep.
That's another one, Christopher. Why don't you follow up with me on, hey, how are you? Nice to see you on camera here. Definitely follow up with me on LinkedIn, because that is a conversation that we are having, and I don't have an answer for you right off the top here. But I think it's certainly a consideration that we are working on. So
Yeah, there's a lot of interoperability standards organizations out
mhm.
there that are starting to talk to each other and also defining standards on IEEE. And I'm just wondering how far that is into it on the
Yeah.
interoperability.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of the work that I personally do is focused on the experiences folks are building for their own applications.
Right.
But I certainly think that like moving forward, it's in everyone's best interest to be able to have this ability to export the stuff that you're building in Unity for these other experiences, and et cetera. So yeah,
Absolutely.
let's chat on LinkedIn, and we can chat a little bit
Sounds
more
great.
detail. Cool. Awesome.
I believe we are at time. In fact, we're a minute over. Kevin, thanks again
Yeah.
for sharing all this. This is awesome. I have a whole couple pages of notes here. I'll be certainly following up with you.
Cool.
And everyone else, thanks for taking some time out of your Thursday, showing up with your attention, your good questions, and we'll talk to you all
Cool.
soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
See. For a second, Kevin. I sent you emailed you my phone number. You want to just give me a quick call?
Oh, yeah, sure thing. All right.
All right, let's do that.